Welcome to The Sober Unicorn. We are a gay hosted, all inclusive podcast about sobriety and addiction recovery for the LGBT plus community and all of our allies. I am your host, Holden, and thank you for joining us today. Hey everybody, it's Holden back here again with The Sober Unicorn. I hope everybody's doing absolutely amazing. Before I introduce my guest, I do want to kind of preface my absence. Don't worry, I'm totally okay. Nothing cray cray happened. Just kind of life took over. A lot of changes at work happened. I took a week and a half vacation to see my partner's family out of the country, and just kind of work has been chaotic. So the thing is, I had to take a step back from the podcast for kind of my own mental health. But we are back, fully ready to go. Um, and I even got like a new microphone. I mean, Hold is trying to do it right and tight this time, okay? So, but yeah, so my absence was nothing crazy. Just the fact of I needed to take a step back to focus on some just personal matters in my regular stressful life. So, anyways, so today we have a colleague that I was looking for somebody to speak, and I was like, crazy enough, since I moved out of corporate office of my company, like I don't work with barely anybody in recovery anymore. And so I was like, wait, are you in recovery? And she's like, yeah. And so I was like, all right, girl, you're coming on the podcast. So hello, Mia. How are you?
I'm doing so well. How are you?
I'm doing good. If your computer would stop lagging. It's okay.
Sorry.
No, it may catch up. It'll be fine. So I wanted Mia to kind of come on, share her story, her journey, kind of um like what her experience was like through addiction and how she got out of it. So like I'll let her take over for a bit and we'll go from there.
Thanks, Holden. Thanks for having me on this podcast. It is weird because ever since I moved to the mental health side, nobody's in recovery. I'm like, where's everyone's vapes? Like, oh my God, you guys don't vape over here in mental health? Okay, well. So, where do I even start? Do we do trigger warnings or anything? Because it does get a little rough at points.
No, no, I don't. I mean, I don't really give trigger warnings. I always list it as explicit. So, I mean, if you're triggered, hashtag sorry about it. It's reality of the addiction game.
So true. So I've been sober for 5 years. I celebrated 5 years in December. So my birthday is December 2nd, and my sober day is December 4th. So in 2019, that's how bad my birthday was, that 2 days later, I was like, "Oh, we need to do something about this." So, like, growing up, I lived with my mom, and I was raised by her mom, and her stepdad, and nobody really drank. So I didn't grow up around anybody that was using alcohol at all, pretty much. But when I was like 18, 19, I moved back to Miami to live with my dad and my stepmom, and they were drinking alcoholically. I know now. Back then, I didn't realize because I had never seen what a normal relationship with alcohol was. So I think that was, like, a huge factor for me when I started drinking, because I started drinking with them, and like, my stepmom would drink a bottle of wine a night. My dad was drinking at least most of a bottle of vodka every night. So, I joined up with them, plus in Miami, like, we were going out partying all the time, and I didn't know there was anything abnormal about it. And then, as you get older, things start to happen to you, like, my parents split up. I was having to live with, this guy who was, like, psychologically abusing me, and I was, like, in that situation for over a year before I eventually had to move back with my dad, and, um, where it gets rough, I was, like, stalked by a customer at the restaurant I worked at, and he ended up, like, drugging me and sexually assaulting me. And I don't think I was so young. I was in my early 20s, and I was like had been so sheltered, and all of a sudden life just hit. I didn't know how to cope, and I didn't really know how to ask for help, really, because I remember I went to like I got some free sessions from the Roxy Bolton Treatment Center in at Jackson, and I remember going there to speak with the social worker, and we would talk about, like, where our favorite pizza was in the Grove. Like, it was looking back, I'm like, "What were you doing?" But I really started to use alcohol to cope with the pain I was feeling inside, and, that continued. I ended up, getting married to this guy that I hardly knew, which was a huge mistake, um and then I moved up to Fort Lauderdale. I was working at this restaurant called Padrino's, a Cuban restaurant, and I met this girl. Her name was Morgan, and she was in recovery. She was a recovering opiate addict, and her and I became friends. She actually hated me at first, but somehow I won her over. That was pretty
It's the
awesome.
resting bitch face.
And she basically saw how much I was suffering. Like, I remember on my birthday, I had invited her over, and I was drinking. And my mom was talking to Morgan and was basically like, "Oh, well, like, me as an alcoholic." And Morgan looks at me and she goes, "Your mom thinks you're an alcoholic?" And, like, for some reason at that moment, it all, like, my thin veil of denial just, like, shattered, and I was like, "Yeah, I think I am." So 2 days later, I did get sober, and I never went to treatment because I never had health insurance, and I never even like, back then, I don't even think that I even considered that a possibility. I just went to AA, a lot, in the beginning especially, and I remember, like, the first 3 months, I was fighting for my life every single day, and, by having those connections, especially, like, Morgan introduced me to her friends, and I ended up being sponsored by her sponsor. Um, I always say it's so important to our clients who are, starting their own recovery journey to make that, network a priority, because if my mom was over here like, "You need to go to, like, have you been to a meeting?" Like, "Blah, blah, blah," like, I would've been like, "Oh my god, shut up." But if my friend Morgan or my friend Cass called me and said, "Hey, are you gonna go to home group tonight?" I'll be like, "Yeah, I'll be there." Just like a different dynamic. You don't wanna put your family in charge of micromanaging your recovery. Um, so that was at the end of 2019. We all know what happened in a couple months later in 2020. It was, like, full pandemic. I lost my job at a restaurant. It closed, like, indefinitely. Um, and then for some reason, I think it had to have been God, I never got unemployment. They never approved my unemployment. So I was
Which
working
is
2.
crazy.
I know, because everyone was getting it. Even my mom was
Yeah.
getting it. It wasn't like she hadn't been unemployed.
Even I
But
had friends in California that even when jobs and places are starting to open again, if you stated that you weren't going back to work because you were scared of COVID, they still paid unemployment. A friend of mine got unemployment for almost 3 years because he just kept saying, "I'm too scared to go back to work."
I know, like, it's wild. But, yes, for some reason, I never got approved, and I tried, believe me. But I worked 2 jobs that whole time, and I think that saved my life because I think if I was staying home, like, doing nothing all day, I probably wouldn't be sober, or I probably would have relapsed. But I was working, doing collections at a title loan, um, agency. So they weren't doing loans, I was just trying to collect the money, and, it was super hard because nobody had any money. Like, I would call these people and say, "Hey, like, you owe a payment on this title loan," and they would say, "Well, I'm living in my car, like, I do not have money to pay you." So what I did was I had this whole office to myself. I had computers, I had a printer, I had all these things. Said, "Okay, if you wanna come in, like, we can socially distance, and if you need help or you need a place to file for unemployment, try to get food stamps, like, you can do those things here." So, I ended up being able to collect all the money doing that, and, that same friend, once I had done that and I closed the business, she said, "Well, it sounds like what you're doing is a lot like what I'm doing in case management at this treatment center, why don't you apply and see if you can come work here?" And so that's what I did, and that kind of led me down the path to where I am today, like, I'm a grad student.
So, does she s are you still working at the same treatment center you of course, we're not gonna name the name of it, but the, like, the first one that you got the job at, is that where you're still currently at?
No, I work for a completely different company now.
Okay.
That that treatment center was in the middle of nowhere, like, we would drive like, she and I both worked there, so we would carpool. Well, then it was an hour and 20 minutes both ways. It was insanity, and we did that for almost 2 years.
Well, that's like you and I both got moved to another location and like it was sometimes 2 hours to get to work depending on traffic, but you know what? That's besides the point. So, I'm gonna kinda reverse it a little bit, and then we're gonna kinda touch into that touchy subject of, the sexual assault.
Mhm.
So, you no longer had alcohol to cope, and as you said, the little therapist that you got sessions with was, like, talking about your favorite pizza, which isn't helpful whatsoever. So, like, what did you or have you done to be able to, um, forgive, to move past, and no longer hold resentments?
So, like, there was a lot more going on during that situation. So, like, I was living with my dad in the Grove in this tiny apartment, and my dad's a severe alcoholic. He's sober now, thank God, but, he was basically trying to drink himself to death, and I was there having to bear witness to this, like, very, very tragic situation. And I remember um when I told him what had happened to me, I was really, like, hoping that he would, like, whatever, like, show up for me in some way, and instead he felt bad about himself, which, like, that hurt the most. Like, that completely wrecked me as, like, a 22-year-old girl. Um, and I remember so he was drinking alcoholically. This is about to get so serious. And I had this he had done, like, a crime, and he had, like, the police were looking for him basically, and I was staying somewhere else because I was like, "I cannot deal with this man and his drinking right now." Um, but I remember and I knew that the cops were looking for him, so I one day I was driving in my car and I was like, "Let me just go and see, like, if he's still there, maybe I can go back." I just kinda had, like, a weird feeling. So I go to the apartment and I find him, like, collapsed in the bathroom, and, so, he's, like, unresponsive. I call 911 and they come and get him, and he had, like, essentially, like I don't even know how to say that, like, he had cut off all huh? Yeah, he basically stroked out and, like, passed out, and so when I would go see him at the hospital, he was, like, handcuffed to the bed. It was like, "Oh,
Why was he
no,"
handcuffed to the
because the
bed?
police were looking for him.
Oh, so
So
okay, so they were, like, making sure he wouldn't escape.
yeah, but he was not going anywhere. So it was like all those things at once, and I did like as a young, at 22, you're not very mature, especially when you're so sheltered like I was. Like I did not know how to understand, and I do not blame that social worker because I understand now you have to meet your client where they're at, and I was not ready to get. I had like a very, very like I had covered that trauma with Saran wrap. Like any like little poke would have just like unleashed it all.
So, what have you done? So, where are you at with that? Like, did you seek out therapy?
So my therapy journey started late. Like I know like when our clients come in, we start therapy immediately. I got sober and it wasn't until I was getting a divorce is when I sought therapy. And that's
Okay,
when
okay.
so I was like I went into therapy thinking, okay, we're gonna talk about this divorce. And then instead it was like a regurgitation of all these years of trauma. And I had to deal with all of that. But I think that was the best thing for me because I was like I had the tools to deal with it at that time, like, I was in a good place to kind of unpack all that stuff so that I could move forward.
No, 100%. I mean, and that's what I wanna kinda tell everybody that's going through recovery is it's okay to seek outside help.
Oh,
Like,
100%.
yes, 12 steps are a great thing, but sometimes you need a professional to step in
Yeah.
and assist with things, as well as I didn't go to treatment either. So, I did not realize until I started working in the industry, like, I did not realize how easily accessible treatment is. Like, I didn't realize it was a quick phone call. I could have been on a plane within 24 hours. They
Yeah.
like I'd have a case manager handle all my paperwork for me. Like
Mhm.
these are things that people are unaware of. And so like here I am like dying of alcoholism and meth addiction and as somebody plus size smoking meth. It's definitely not good for your heart. And it was one phone call away, one
Yeah.
Google search, and so anybody going through addiction, like, it's not hard to get into treatment, not whatsoever. So and I was recommended by a friend into treatment too in the industry. Um, I had a job waiting for me at Cleveland Clinic as a cardiovascular surgical coordinator for the cardiology
Mm.
department. And they kept pushing back my start date and kept pushing it back. And I'm like, bitch, I'm gonna run out of money. And so my friend Josh at the time was like, oh, hey, well, my company's hiring. Why don't you come on over here? And I had like the interview 2 days later and started the next day. And now we're going on 2 years in the company. And congratulations on what was it, 5 years?
Yeah. It's
That's
insanity.
insanity.
Yeah. Especially because if you told me 5 years ago, like, you'll have, like, a big girl job, you'll be in grad school, you finished college and now you're in grad school, I would've been like, "Shut up, I'm a loser."
I so mine and your sober dates are close together. So I'm December 14th, so 10 days apart. 2022. So I just hit 2 years.
That's
Um
amazing.
yeah, it
Congratulations.
was thank you. It's insane to me to think that it's like, holy shit, not even 2 years with not even like a little sippy sip of vodka, like no nothing. Um because I loved my wine. Anyways, I digress. So
Same.
I loved my wine. Um, so in the steps of I know you said you went to AA primarily.
Mhm.
So what do you think was the most beneficial thing out of the 12 steps that helped you stay sober?
I think, the inventory for sure, because, like, when I did the 4-step, I was always like, "I don't have resentment." Like, "What are you talking about? I just, easy breezy." No, like, and a lot of that anger that or, like, the resentment I had was towards my dad, 'cause I'm like, "How dare you?" Like and then when I went to therapy, like so I dealt with all of that, and when I went to therapy, my therapist told me something 'cause I was, like, having a pity party, I'm sure, and she's like, "Mia, don't you realize that you were the one even in your darkest hour, you had the strength to pull him out too?" And I was like, "Whoa." And she's like, "That's why you're sober and he's not." And it kind of shifted my perspective because, I just had always been down on myself, was always putting myself down for everything. So I think and I did end up having, like, because they say that the whole point of the 12 steps is to have this spiritual experience and, like, make a lasting change. And I think I did end up having, like, some type of an awakening that kind of changed everything for me and changed how I saw life.
Well, and then did you ever thank your mother? Because you said it was your friend Morgan that she came to your birthday and your mom was like, "This did you know that me as a dumb bitch of an alcoholic?" And that it helped kinda Morgan to be like, "Oh, shit." So, I mean, did you and your mother ever sit down and have that conversation that it kinda brought into light that you were struggling and you didn't really realize it?
Um, Probably not. I could thank her right now.
Girl,
Thanks,
it's been 5
mom.
years. You should have thanked her already.
No. Um, she says you're welcome. She doesn't know I'm thanking her for it. Um, no, but she's always been, like, the most supportive. She hasn't had a she'll tell you, she hasn't had a drink in 5 years either.
What?
Yeah, so everyone kind of yeah, so, like, none of my family has had a drink in 5 years, like, in solidarity with me, like, when we have, like, a party or whatever, there's never really any alcohol, or if there, like, is, like there's, like, a single bottle of wine for my sister-in-law, but yeah, like, that's how much, like, alcoholism was not or, like, alcohol was not in my family other than on my dad's side.
Yeah. Sorry, that was work, I'm so sorry. Um, we're always working, you know
I
how
know,
it
I
is.
know. I mute that Teams chat, I'll tell you what. The second 5 o'clock Friday, I'm like, "Mute, goodbye."
But my position is a little different. I work
I know,
24/7.
I know.
Anyways, so I mean that's incredible that your family is kind of in solidarity with that because I know mine, don't be wrong, they support it and everything like that, but my family's a bunch of alcoholics too. And
Mhm.
so like they'll pull out the bottles of wine and be like, "Oh, is it okay, Holden?" And I'm like, "What am I gonna say? No?" Like, this like, I can't tell them no. So I'm like, and again, even though 2 years is still a short time in sobriety, like, I'm in a place where it's like, I don't care if I'm around liquor, it doesn't bother me. Like, I don't really crave alcohol anymore.
Mm-mm.
Yes, while on vacation, there was a couple times where I'm like, "Hmm," but it's primarily because you're on vacation, you're having a good
Yeah,
time, you wanna sit on the beach and have a little Mai Tai. Um, but it's not craving it because, "Ooh, I wanna get fucked up."
yeah.
It's
No, I
more
completely agree with you. Like, even when I have
like
a bad day, like, everything's, like, going to shit, I never think about drinking because, like, what could make this situation worse? You know, I
mhm.
could just lose everything real quick. But when things are good or, like, we're celebrating or on vacation, it kind of does get a little harder, and I do try to warn my clients about that, even if you're doing bad and you don't think about it, you always have to keep it in your brain. What I did is I just took it off the table for me, like, I do not drink under any circumstances, anywhere, no matter what happens, you know? And that,
Yeah,
like,
it's
that's one of
hashtag
the
no
tough
matter
things.
what.
Yeah.
'Cause I know I did, NA, which, I mean, who gives a shit? Just do something for your recovery. I don't care what 12-step program or CBT, Dharma, I don't give a shit, just stay sober. But that was kind of what I got from the NA was that no matter what, whether it's good, bad, ugly, or otherwise, because at the end of the day, like, exactly what you just said, what's gonna make it worse? Alcohol, drugs, overdoses, deaths, I mean, everything. So, do you still go to meetings today?
Not like, I haven't been to a meeting in a while,
Me neither.
but I think I might but I've been pondering going back and just, I think the last time I went to a meeting was, what is it? Like, it's the biker meeting in Hollywood, and that
Okay.
might have been, like, a year ago, like, a little, like, more than
A
a
lot
year
of people love
ago.
that meeting.
Oh, it's really good. It's really good.
Yeah.
So I met a
My
friend
meeting's
there.
switching around because they got kicked out of their space.
But I like,
Be
I do love going to AA. I never disliked the meetings. My home group was at the Dania Beach Women's Center on Wednesdays.
Oh, Dania Beach is so good. I love the Dania Beach.
So it was all women. I could always go back there, but no, I
Yeah.
haven't been. Like, just because I have so much, like, I know that this is just excuses because I definitely do have time, like, even to hop on Zoom, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
but I think that working in the industry, it's always so in your face. So, like, if I'm running a group and we're talking about, you know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
or if I'm meeting up with my dad, like, my dad always says that. He's like, "Do you wanna go to a meeting?" And then he picks me up and he's like, "A meeting is 2 alcoholics or like," or whatever they say.
That is so true. So, I mean, with not going to meetings per se, and I understand we both work in the industry, so but we have to understand that it's work, not your recovery. So,
Mhm,
yes, recovery's in your face at all times, and that's kind of why I stepped back was because it's a podcast about recovery, a book about recovery, work is recovery. Like, I was just recovered out.
mhm,
Like, I don't want my and especially my partner's a normie, so I don't want, like, my entire existence to be centered around recovery. Um, and but yes, my entire existence centered around sobriety, so don't get it twisted, people. But
mhm.
um, So, like, what do you do on I would say, a daily basis to make sure that you constantly kind of remind yourself of, like, this is why you don't drink and this is why you're gonna continue this journey?
So, the other day I was talking to Ingrid Weiss, and she's a social worker who works with us, and we were talking just like on a personal level, and I was telling her a little bit about like my story. She was telling me hers, and I was like, yeah, well, I was telling her about grad school. She's a social worker as well, and she goes, guess what? It's working, and I was like, you're right, Ingrid, it's working. So just like thinking about how like far I've come in the last 5 years and what like how different my life looks, how different I look physically, how different I feel, um, really like motivates me to keep going because I still like acutely remember what it felt like to be in like the throes of active addiction. Like that feeling of like despair has always stuck with me. That it feels like 5 years, it like, I almost can't believe it because it feels like it could have
Yeah.
been a week ago. So, and I'm not sure, like, I always like, when we have clients come in, like, sometimes, like, people can lose that desperation in a couple days, couple minutes, but I feel like I've never lost it, and I don't know if that has anything to do with not going to treatment, like, I know how bad like, I still can remember how bad it was. So that motivates me to keep going every day.
Th no tea, no shade to anybody that goes through treatment, but this is kind of how I felt about it because I've seen people go through a bougie treatment center and
Mhm.
literally that within an hour get fucked up, go right back. Then I've seen people go through like horrific treatment centers that are like roaches everywhere, that are state ran, state funded, and just nasty. And those people stay sober to this day.
Mhm,
And so I've seen where it's like you were still dealing with the struggle of life when you got sober. You
mhm.
weren't thrusted into this beautiful, safe space and then automatically thrusted back into reality. You were still
Yeah.
dealing with reality. So I think
Yeah.
people that still deal with reality while getting sober normally stay sober longer. Um, but again, it's all different. Everybody's so, so, so different, and I think it's also when you're ready. I think when you're
Mhm.
finally ready, it's gonna stick. I mean, I didn't stay sober the first time I got sober. I didn't stay sober the second time I got sober. So, I mean, but this last time I was just done. I was
Yeah.
like, "This is it. You're either sober or you just keep pushing forward and never think about sobriety again." Um, oh, there was a question I was gonna ask you, but I done
I always
forgot.
say that people are different, but the disease is the same. So, do with that what you will.
It is the same. It's mind, body, spirit. It's the fact of once you have enough of it, it's a physical craving. Your body actually it's a necessity for your body to function.
Mhm.
And then you have the mind portion where it's like that's when you're like thinking about going and grabbing a drink and thinking about going to the bar and stuff
The
like that. And then
obsession.
you have this spiritual, yeah, the obsession. Then you have the spirituals, like what is wrong on your insides that you think that you need to have a drink. Like because for me, I personally, I feel that if you're an addict, you have something in mental health
Oh, yeah.
always. Normally, mental health and addiction normally, it goes hand in hand. So, I would say, like for you, what would you say to a struggling addict that is still out there ripping and running? Like, what would you say to them?
I would say, like, just give it a shot because I just know how I felt about myself, like, how low my own self-esteem was. I've had, like, all these, like, "You're a loser, you're unlovable, you're stupid." Like, I really, like, thought these things about myself, and, like, none of that is true, you know? So, I thought I wasn't worth it. I think everybody is worth, like, fighting for, and I think that it's worth it to fight for your own life, you know? So just,
Yeah,
like, I try to motivate, um, my clients especially, like, don't get, like, complacent and don't accept that this is just the way it is or, like, "My pain's too much, I can't deal with it without these substances." Like, you can, you just have to fight for it, fight for your life.
Exactly. Well, again, thank you so much, Mia, for coming and joining us today. I greatly appreciate it.
Of course.
Thank you for listening to our episode. If you want to be notified about every new episode release, hit that subscribe button. Make sure to check out our website at thesoberunicornpodcast.com. Don't forget, everybody, don't be normal, be a unicorn, but better yet, be a sober unicorn.